do you think Rafizi's future is? Some people say that he purposely resigned and then he retreats so that he can actually get connected more to the grassroots. Some people think that this will help him to be more focused on the whole reform agenda, therefore building the stronger opposition voice within PKR.
I would say that if you want to effect any change, the reform agenda and so on, you can do so much more being a minister than you can ever do not being a minister. So I don't think the reason to quit or to want to step aside is to be able to focus better on reform agenda.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Are We OK? And we are entering season 2 as we went on quite a long hiatus for a while where our co-host, Dr. Ong Kian Ming, left the show and went on to a new career path, we would say. So today we are having our very first episode after the hiatus. And we thought of still bringing back the topic of current issues so that men and women in the street can still understand policies better and what is happening behind the curtain. And for that to happen, we decided to bring in Mr. Rajiv to come and join us.
Hi Peter, thanks for having me on the show. And I think a lot of people will be surprised because we thought it was going to be over.
That's right, yeah. So when I posted the final episode, when I read through the comment, a lot of people actually wanted this podcast to continue and some of them left some very encouraging remarks. They said that even though Dr. Ong is no more around, why not get a few other guests? And so that's what we decided to try out. Yeah. So this time around,
I was one of them. I wanted the show to go on.
That's right. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we were very fortunate. After that, YB Rajiv, I'll call you Mr. Rajiv for now.
Yeah, just
right?
Rajiv.
Rajiv,
just
right,
Rajiv,
for now.
right.
And Rajiv mentioned that he don't mind being a part of it, helping us to take us behind the curtain a little bit more as well. And I came to understand this whole context of how they work and everything. And I believe that Rajiv have a different perspective as well to offer. And I think if you are part of a Selangor constituent, you would definitely know him because he is the Petaling Adun.
Yeah, I'm the Adun for Bukit Gasing, so shout out to all my residents. But I'm also happy to talk to everyone from all over the country about all these current issues that we have.
That's right.
I think we are pending quite a bit of issues because we have not been on the air for the last few weeks.
That's right. So let's not waste time. I think I want to go into one of the most exciting topics over the last few weeks, right? Which is the PKR election. Right, I've had that conversation with so many people off camera.
Yes.
That I'm quite excited to bring it in front of the camera right now.
All right.
So let's begin with this thing, right? We know the context was this. There was an election in PKR.
Yes.
So Rafizi was fighting for his seat as a deputy president, right? But what happened is that he lost it, and he lost it to Nurul Izzah. And from that day on, there were a lot of questions being asked, I think, revolving around, for Nurul Izzah, it will be about nepotism. For Rafizi, quickly after that, he actually resigned, right? I think that was something that kind of shocked everyone because while he did say that he will resign if he loses his seat, I think quite many people didn't expect him to really, really follow through.
All right.
Right. So what are your thoughts about that? Is it normal for a party member who lost his internal party election to actually just resign from a ministerial position?
I think we have to look at how the PKR elections were run. And I think let's take one step back. The fact that, every political party has to do elections and you have a big tent of members. Every political party is huge. Every mainstream party is huge. You have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of members. And you have to have elections every 2, 3 or 4 years to choose your leadership. And so there will always be contests and there always will be winners and losers. No matter now of what do we do after we win or we lose. And I think for Rafizi, he kind of sealed his fate because he wrote on that principle. He declared it very clearly upfront that if he loses, he will step aside. And to a large extent, to the credit of PKR, their ministerial appointments have largely been based on the party hierarchy. So the president is the prime minister, the deputy gets a ministership, or the vice presidents get to be Menteri Besar or ministers. So the appointment of ministers have been very much decided based on the party hierarchy. Now, if you look at DAP and some other parties, it is not directly correlated. Enough individuals may not hold high posts within the party, but are also appointed as ministers.
That's right.
So then, if that's the case, you're appointed as a minister because of the prime minister's preference on you as a person, or what you can bring to the table, or what you can contribute in that particular ministry, or just contribute in general in cabinet. So,
Right.
so then you are appointed maybe on your personal merits. I think then you don't resign when you lose a party election, because you're there because you were appointed not from your party position.
Right.
But in many other cases, you are there because of your party position.
Right.
And then when you lose that party position, then your standing to be there is taken away.
Okay,
Then you might want to step aside. So if you look at cases overseas, when you lose the party position, to step aside is not unheard of.
Yeah,
it's
not
new
unheard
in Malaysia,
Yeah.
but it's not unheard of.
Yeah, I think
overseas.
there were some talks that previously last time, even during MCA time, when they lose their internal party election, some minister actually did give away their seat, or either some sort of a cabinet reshuffle and transfer around kind of thing does happen,
That's
right?
happened. So the principle is respecting what the grassroots have chosen as the leadership of the party, and then in turn, that leadership of the party should represent the party in the government.
Right.
So, and because he made the pledge to do so it doesn't surprise me that he followed through on it. I think it'd be quite difficult for him to not follow through on it. If he didn't follow through on it, I'm sure there'd be many detractors in the party
That's right.
and in the public who will call him out on it.
That's right.
So all of them kept quiet because he resigned.
Yeah.
Then his supporters would have wanted him to stay on or express shock that he actually followed through on it. But I think knives would definitely have come out for him if he didn't resign, especially because he went and put it out there so boldly that he will resign. Now, if you notice, a lot of people who contest party elections never say things like this. They focus on contesting the party position, whatever the position is, but they never say, like Amiruddin, when he contested for the vice president, he never said, if I lose the vice president, I will resign as Selangor MP.
Yeah. That's not a very wise move to make, unless you're really, really going all in. But I guess for him, another thing is that I thought it would be quite interesting because he's the guy who has been branding himself as the guy that's still trying to push for reformation, right? And if let's say after he said that he's going to resign, then you don't resign, then
you lose your credibility.
You lose his credibility.
Whereas if you don't say it at all, which, a lot of people who contest party elections in and outside of PKR, other parties as well,
right?
They don't say things like that. They don't make that declaration. They talk about why they're contesting, or they may talk on certain issues which they think will help them in their campaign. They may attack their opponents, but they don't ever mention things like, if I lose, I will step aside.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So that is one of the key differences.
I see.
So I think whether we like it or not, he had no choice but to actually follow through on his word. It's better to step aside for a short while and come back. Because he's still young. He's still in his 40s.
That's right.
So he's got a long way ahead of him. Yeah. At least another 20 years in politics, maybe 25, 30 years in politics. Play the long game.
Yeah.
So if you step aside for a short while, doesn't mean you can't bounce back and can't come back.
Let's look at the other part of it, because I understand this whole PKR election for this year has been really, really exciting, because for the longest time ever, they were very united to actually stand up as opposition. After Mahathir's time as the second term of Prime Minister, it's been very united, fighting for one cause, until this time round, Anwar Ibrahim became our PM, and we started seeing factions. So there were a lot of rumors brewing where Rafizi and Anwar from two different camps, right? Yeah, where one is trying to push for reform because he feels that the other party is actually not following through with the whole reformation agenda, and that's how is he being viewed as. But there were also a lot of rumors about that I've seen, is that people also felt that Rafizi is, as he went into that position as a minister, he slowly became more and more aloof and more distant from the grassroots as well. But yet, when it came to the point of this particular election time, a lot of people did say that this whole thing, it's kind of like, memang, the boss don't want him to be there, and he's really trying to challenge it, right? And so it's kind of like there's this huge tension. And from what I've heard in the public and from people that I've heard things from, many of them did say that they feel Rafizi has already became very distant, and they don't like the fact that as a Raja formula, he always thinks that he's correct and he doesn't consult people and stuff like that.
Right.
No, but at the moment he lost his position, there was this whole narration that he's also very close to the grassroots. So I'm just a little bit confused about the whole dynamics, or maybe I would say that, can you help us to take us back behind the curtain a little bit to understand of the dynamic of relationship that's actually happening within the PKR party?
Well, let's say that, things are not always black and white. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, many things that you pointed out just now, they can all be true at the same time. I mean, every politician is close to the grassroots in their own way. To say that they are detached or completely closed, also it's two extremes. It's always a shade of grey.
Right.
So I'm sure he has his own way to deal with his supporters and to maintain his relationship with his supporters. And there are many levels of supporters. You've got your fellow MPs who are your supporters, and then you've got your local division leaders who are your supporters, and then you've got your general members who are your supporters. And no doubt, as someone as high-ranking as a deputy president of a party, you don't drink tea with everyone every day. It's just too many people in the party to do so. It's just not physically possible. So there is ways that you interact. And there's also your team. There's also your fellow MPs, your fellow aduns who are part of your team that also interact with the ordinary members who are your supporters. So it's a very big team affair. I think hotly contested is always hotly contested. It's a matter of whether the public pays attention to the hotly contested party elections or not. But I think all party elections are hotly contested.
Just a moment. Let me just stop you there for a moment.
Sure.
When we talk about hotly contested, right? I'm starting to realize that there's two parts of this contest.
Okay.
There are certain party where you don't openly contest. Where at the moment it comes to a contest, it's kind of like already set. So you contest before your name is being raised up. And then there's the other one that you really bring it up and contest.
I would say that you always contest before the nomination day. To be real, to be fair, in every party, you always have a contestation that starts long before the official nomination period.
Right.
So there's the official nomination period and then the actual election day. And that window is different for each party, maybe a month, maybe 2 weeks or so. But the real contestation happens 1 year before that.
So the real action is before that.
Yes, and the real negotiation, building up your supporter base. If anyone wants to contest a high position, then you cannot stand alone.
Right.
You definitely need to have a lot of division leaders supporting you. So you are constantly canvassing the support. And this is like a all year round affair.
Right.
It's not something that just happens 3 weeks before the party election. So that always happens. Now, it's just a matter of whether the public is paying attention to it, or is whether the media is paying attention to it. And maybe when you're in the opposition, less media pays attention to it because maybe they just see that, Anwar is the head of the party. It doesn't really matter who the top 10 people after that are.
Right.
And people just look at DAP, Anthony Lok is the head of the party, or previously Lim Guan Ning is the head of the party. And then if you ask them, the CEC members, can you name even half of them? And most people can't name half of them. Within the political circle, everyone knows everyone.
That's right.
But if you talk about the general public, in all fairness, look at the UMNO Supreme Council.
Oh, yeah.
Can you name half of the UMNO Supreme Council members?
I definitely can't.
This is a political show. We can't name half the UMNO Supreme Council members. What more?
You
the
can,
general
not
public?
me.
Okay, maybe I can. But the point is, the public may not look into this level of detail.
That's right.
You can't contest a high position, like to be the head of the party or the deputy head of the party, without having sufficient support within your Supreme Council.
That's true.
Without from your state leadership. Okay. So you need to canvass all this support. This canvass is ongoing and it's a lifelong canvas. It is not a one-off thing for the election once in 3 years.
No. Let's throw back to the part of Rafizi, right? So as we were talking about the complex relationship there, what was actually happening behind the scenes, right? Is it more because people are trying to go in favor of Anwar, as in trying to consolidation of power, or is it really that he lost the grassroots support? Which do you think it really was leaning more towards?
Well, your grassroots support, when you talk about the ordinary member support, it never stands alone. It goes with the whole hierarchy of leadership. You need to ensure that not your MPs support you. You need to ensure that the state leadership supports you. And I think in this case, he lost the majority support. And people wanted someone different. And then they rallied behind one option. So if they rally behind 3 options, then it's a bit harder to change the incumbent. But if you want to change the incumbent, then normally they rally behind another option. So I would say that based on what I know of the individuals behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, that it is not a case of nepotism, but it is a case where they rallied behind one person who they hoped could beat Rafizi for the
Right.
people who wanted a change within the party structure. A lot of times it's your working relationship, your working preferences that dictate things like this, and how much time you spend cultivating relationships or ignoring relationships that
Right.
leads to things like that. So it was a tightly contested fight the last round as well when Rafizi beat Saifuddin. And it was also a tightly contested fight the round before that when Azmin beat Rafizi. So it's always a tight fight. It's always hotly contested. Maybe we may have forgotten the previous rounds, but the deputy presidency in PKR has always been hotly contested. So for the wisdom that the leadership and at the local level and at the state level and at the national level, the collective leadership felt that they wanted a change. That's their decision for them to carry out. Like that's why you have these party elections for that. But I would say that now that they have done this, and so it's time to move on. And he's resigned. I expected that PMX will accept his resignation,
Yeah.
and today is his last day in office as we're recording this. So the PMX has finally given the signal that he has accepted.
That's
so
right.
It took a while, but he's given the signal that he accepted, and it looks like from this Rafizi camp, the quote unquote camp, some of them have been retained, like the Negeri Sembilan MB as well as Chang Li Kang. Those are two vice presidents that are seen to be in Rafizi's camp, but also made it through the election. They won. So in the 4 vice presidents, it's like 2-2. Two
Right.
from the Nurul Izzah camp and 2 from the Rafizi
Right.
camp. So it seems to be a balanced outcome.
Right. So at the behind the scene, what we are seeing, although Rafizi is taking most of the headline,
Yeah.
but what we are seeing is actually it's still a little bit more balanced,
I think
actually, right?
there's enough people at the top, including probably PMX, but enough people at the top who's like, let's keep the party intact. Let's not go for a all or nothing situation where we
Right.
kill off one faction totally, and that may cause a split in the
Right.
party. So but it's like, while the deputy president, only one person can win, but levels below that, both sides are
Both sides
included.
win, right?
Both sides are included.
Yeah. Once he announced that, he said, however, Nick Nazmi, he wished that he would stay. So it's kind of like a very like, whoa.
Sometimes this is also, like polite culture. We don't want to kick you when you lose. Like, so okay lah, like, say things like that, like, hope you reconsider or what, but we don't know what his true intentions are. And he may want to keep Nick Nazmi for a particular reason. I think Nick Nazmi has been a performing minister, and maybe despite him not holding that role as vice president, may still want to retain him. But there are also other ways to serve. Even if you're not a minister, you
That's
can be
right.
given other roles.
That's right.
To steer certain committees or lead certain agenda or initiatives.
Now, when it comes to the second part of this, right, it's actually Nurul Izzah, right? Here's where I think it's really interesting, because if you look at it purely from optics wise, a lot of people are actually saying that, hey, now this is turning into a Anwar family dynasty, right? Where Nurul Izzah becomes deputy president. And so it kind of like, it's a family business suddenly. Yeah, this whole thing is about keeping his family in. But as I was speaking to many people as well, and if I were to look at it by zooming it out, right, in the whole track history of her being in the politics and so on, she has also stood up to prove herself rather
Yes.
capable along the years. Yes, may not be the most experienced of all and whatnot, but it's not like she's some young dumb blonde who's just put there,
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was just wondering about this question, right? Is it really because Nurul Izzah is the daughter of Anwar? Or is it just that at that point, they really did not want Rafizi as deputy? They just needed someone there. And Nurul Izzah comes up to be a contestant that's worth considering.
I really don't think this is a case of curating the nepotism. That is seen in many other situations around the world. But I really don't see this as a situation where he's trying to create the next successor. It's more of a situation where, for the people who didn't want Rafizi to be deputy president, they wanted somebody else to be deputy president. Who can beat Rafizi? And that is not an easy question to deal with. I think after the last round, it shows that Rafizi is definitely a very formidable campaigner, organizer, and not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry can unseat him from the deputy presidency. And so you need someone formidable. So to her credit, I would say she's formidable. And the combination of not just herself, but her team. Like she campaigned very closely with Selangor MB Amiruddin and many other of the national leaders of PKR that led this through. Yeah, so I don't see that this is like a father's agenda to prepare the daughter to be next prime minister.
Right. Yeah, because I was actually really thinking myself as well. Aside from Nur Izzah, who else can really compete with Rafizi, right?
Yes.
It's
not easy. It's not easy to find someone.
Yeah, because anyone else that is formidable, they're either holding some sort of position or either they are with his camp. So it's like, who else? I can't really think of anyone else. I mean, maybe they can squeeze out someone.
Actually, there was quite a bit of interest in pushing Amir, the Selangor MB, to contest against Rafizi.
That's right. There were a lot of rumors coming out.
Yes, and then if you notice his comments to the press, he was very coy about it, and then he decided not to go for it, not to do it. And so then I think if Amir doesn't do it, that leaves only Nurul Izzah as a viable choice for the forces that want a change.
Yes. So actually, right after that, I kind of felt bad for her. Because this is when the sad thing is, right? You know, we always think that when people are born in a family where a family of power is a benefit. Yeah.
Sometimes it's a curse.
Yeah, sometimes it's a curse as well. Because even when you work hard or anything,
You see, if she wasn't a daughter of Anwar with all the achievement that she has till today, and for her to win the deputy presidency, for sure she'll be in the cabinet.
That's right.
But because she's the daughter of the prime minister, there's a very high chance she won't be in the cabinet.
That's right. That's right. So it's
you got your ups and downs lah.
Ups and downs.
Yeah.
Now, let's move on to the other part of the story, right? Is that what do you think Rafizi's future is? Because from what we see here, I've read multiple analysts' views on this. There are multiple views, but we can divide them into a few things. Number one, some people say that it's he purposely resigned and then he retreats so that he can actually get connected more to the grassroots. Some people think that this will help him to be more focused on the whole reform agenda, therefore building the stronger opposition voice within PKR. But some people also think that it will be kind of like a cave of unknown where he's just going to go in and he's going to loiter until he figure out where he goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've never been minister, but the closest I've come to is to work with Yeo Bin when she was a minister of MACC, the Energy and Climate Change and Environment, from 2018 to 2020. And I would say that if you want to effect any change, the reform agenda and so on, you can do so much more being a minister than you can ever do not being a minister. One day as a minister can do so much more than 1 year as a backbencher you can do. So I don't think the reason to quit or to want to step aside is to be able to focus better on reform agenda. If you want to focus on reform agenda, it's much more effective to remain in cabinet.
Right.
But I think it's a case of, he has his principles of the position in cabinet is directly related to his deputy presidency.
Right.
So, if he loses it, then he loses his standing. But it's not over. I think what happens next is totally up to him. If he decides to dig deeper and dig in and redo the fight, then, this is his time to rebuild his network, strengthen his network among the rank and file and among the leadership, and come back in the next party elections stronger. That's one way he can move forward. He also, secured his cabang leadership without contest. So, in Pandan, he's established himself. So I think, he still got some leadership role to play in PKR. He's not out of the game.
Right.
But if he decides that he's done with politics and he wants to go into the private sector, that's also his personal choice.
Right.
I think only time will tell over the next few months. It's possible that he also doesn't really know himself, but it's possible that we need to wait for a few more months to see how he reacts. I think by the budget sitting, we can see how he debates the budget as a backbencher. Does he go after the government? Does he support the government? Does he just keep quiet?
Right.
So I think that would be quite telling in terms of where his future lies in politics. But, you're in your 40s. You got a whole lifetime ahead of you when it comes to party leadership. You can come back in 3 years' time in the next party elections. So it's far from game over.
Yeah. I think let's move on to the next part of it, which is the most important person that we haven't really discussed about. It's actually our Prime Minister. Yeah. Him being the party president.
Yes.
I noticed this time round, while there's this whole big battle going on down there, he seemed to be distant. Like,
From the battle?
yeah, at least from the media portrayal,
Okay.
he seemed to be distant, right?
And
he
he
has take that stance where, it's their fight.
Yeah.
Let them have it. But yet we definitely know that it never works that way, right?
I think he can have his preferences. I
Yeah.
think we are all human. We all have our preferences. A lot of party presidents don't openly take sides.
That's right.
You see that across all the political parties in this country. Very often, those at the highest level, like you're the party president, you don't take sides in a lower level fight.
That's right.
And that helps you to work with whoever who wins. Because while you can predict who might win, if you have the right pulse on your party, upsets happen. Unexpected outcomes happen. And you want to be able to work with whoever who wins. So I'm not surprised that he doesn't take a public position. He may canvass support for someone privately, but he also may choose to not do it so much because he's secure. He's not contesting. He won his post uncontested.
Yeah.
So he's very secure in his position and he doesn't have to spend that time being part of the mudslinging and the nitty-gritty fight and all that, and he could leave it.
No.
And I think no matter what you may want to say publicly, you also have your internal people watching what you do. And if PMX decides that don't get so open in my support, I say let them fight it out. That gives Nurul Izzah so much more credibility when she wins. If everyone is seen to be pressured by PMX to support Nurul Izzah, then when she wins, she's got no credibility, she's got no...
That's right.
I mean, power comes from two sources. One is that position. But second is because people respect you and people choose to follow your leadership. And you can win a position and no one wants to follow you and no one wants to listen to you if you are forced there because the party president kind of like arm twist everyone to support you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to let the person fight it out. You may support a particular candidate for vice president, for state leadership, but you got to let him fight it out and you got to let him win on his own merit. Because if he doesn't win on his own merit, then when he gets there also he's
gonna suffer lah.
semi-lame duck. Yes.
Right.
I would say Nurul Izzah fought her battle.
I want to ask you, right, how do you think our Prime Minister actually handled the whole situation? Like with this whole thing going on, what do you think is running through his head? There were a lot of people who say that he's actually really trying to consolidate power. But I think that that's not really a good argument because who doesn't want to consolidate power, right?
I mean, he has
for many reasons to be...
He has complete control over PKR.
Yeah.
I mean, no one is going to challenge his presidency ever from the past to today. In the case of PMX, he's not under any sort of threat from within the grassroots. He doesn't need to consolidate power. He has sufficient consolidated power.
Right.
The leadership, the rest of the leadership, the vice presidents and all that, they need to consolidate power. But PMX himself, his power is pretty consolidated.
Right.
He's pretty stable where he is. His issue now is whether he can win sufficient public support for him to remain prime minister after the next general elections, not within his party. If you say that he may not have said too much in the party elections, I would agree that, and in fact, I think that was also a right move. You don't publicly get involved when your downline is battling out for positions. Be the statesman, and I think ultimately keep the eye on the bigger battle.
Right.
Do you have the sufficient public support? Because that's what that matters now. The party may have internal fractions at the medium to lower level.
Right.
But it's still united behind him as the head of the party.
So when it comes to this, right, if that's the case, wouldn't it be better that he actually let Rafizi wins? Because then at least there won't be any talk on nepotism on the public eye. It will actually look better.
Yeah, maybe. But
And he's still in support of reformation, you know.
But if, let's say, your top 30 leaders, other than the president, deputy president, the vice presidents, if they want change, then do you want to stop them from changing? To assume that this is all PMX's wishes is, I think, very short-sighted. I think it's far more than that. It's a lot more voices within the top 50 people in the party of what they want.
So, and do you think he handled the whole resignation well as well? The whole resignation and how he did with this whole transition?
There's not much more to handle. He could outrightly reject the resignation, but I think there was no need for him to do so. I think Rafizi was quite set in wanting to move on. So, okay, let's just move on.
That's true.
So, I think now what's interesting is to observe and see who will be the new ministers. So, we got two vacancies. Will there be a reduction in cabinet size? Will there be only one new minister coming in to replace two
reshuffle?
ministers or reshuffle? I don't know. All his indication is leaning towards no reshuffle. Reshuffle probably means dropping somebody who doesn't want to resign. So I think that's where the next interesting phase comes in.
Right.
You know.
All right, cool. Let's take a quick break, and after this short break, we come back. We're going to talk about the future of our cabinet. All right, welcome back to the part 2 of Are We OK Season 2 together with Rajiv.
All right.
All right, Rajiv. So just now we talked all about the elections in PKR, and now we are left with the other issue, which is now we have empty cabinet seats, right?
We do.
Yes, and there's a lot of speculation about this because I think this is something that closely relates to many Malaysian at a really, really practical level.
It is.
Because for the both of them, they actually were considered ministers who hold quite significant portfolio. Nick Nazmi is someone who actually came out with quite a lot of things as well, right?
Yes.
And there's a question about continuity of policies.
All right.
There's also a question about now many of these people there, they do not have a minister, right? So they are bossless, right? In
right.
fact, I just met some of the people yesterday.
Okay.
And who reports to him directly. They're also like, yeah, I'm bossless right now.
Okay. Yes, it's true. They are bossless right now. But I think in the case of these two ministries, the show can still go on. You always have the KSU, the Ministry
That's right.
Secretary General. That's the real CEO of the ministry.
That's
He's
right.
like all the civil servants answer to him.
Yeah.
So you don't have a minister, but you still have the KSU running the show. And the KSU actually runs the show most of the time anyway. The minister gives direction. The minister says let's do this, let's do that, let's change this policy, let's do this initiative. And so this direction is temporarily lacking, but it will come back.
Right,
All right. So
right.
these ministries play an important role in this country. They're not going to disappear. This is not a ministry that can close shop. So it's a matter of whether they merge, because the economic ministry was previously under the Prime Minister's office.
That's right.
The economic planning unit.
Yeah, it's the EPU, right?
Yeah, the EPU. So it could go back there, or it could remain a separate ministry with a new minister. Same thing with the Nick Nazmi's ministry. Used to be two ministries and then was broken up into half. Fadila's got one half and Nick Nazmi's got one half at the last cabinet reshuffle. So one option is you make the cabinet smaller. You combine back these two things, which will combine at different points of time. Another thing is you bring in new ministers, and they might want to keep the quota of the parties.
Which is a huge discussion as well.
It's huge because that formula is what started off the cooperation among the 19 parties that make up this Kerajaan Perpaduan. This unity government is not a two-party combination. It's actually 19 political parties under one roof. And that went through a lot of negotiations at the beginning after the 22 general election. So they may want to retain back this formula if UMNO wants one additional minister to replace Tengku Zafrul, because now he's jumped
That's
over.
another wrench in the whole thing.
We didn't talk about that. Yeah.
We didn't talk about it. Yeah.
But he's jumped, which is a very rare occurrence for a minister to jump party. So that's something notable for the history books. So UMNO may want a new minister, and I think that it's quite possible, quite likely that PMX will give one new ministerial appointment to UMNO. I think Tengku Zafrul will stay on until the very last day of his
That's right.
senatorship. I think the signal is very clear from PMX that he's wanted in MITI. So for him to stay put in MITI until the last day of his ministership looks quite secure. Then that's another problem.
Then after we have three.
We have to deal in December lah.
Right.
When his senatorial position expires, what to do then? That leads to all the speculation of him becoming the MB of Selangor. So.
Yeah, we'll leave that for another episode.
We'll leave
I
that
think.
for another time.
Yeah.
Okay. But coming back to this, so if you look at the two vacancies, not three yet, still two,
Yep,
because
still
one
two.
more is 6 months away.
Yep.
So two vacancies. So it's likely one from PKR, one from UMNO, because Tengku Zafrul has jumped over to PKR, taking up that so-called PKR quota. If you look at it, I would say that the newest incoming vice president, Ramanan, will probably be in the driver's seat to take that PKR ministerial quota. Because if you've seen the pattern of how Anwar has appointed his PKR ministers is based on the position in the party hierarchy. So because he succeeded in his vice president bid and he's a deputy minister, so the chances of him being elevated up is, I think, huge. and I would put him in the front runner seat to take the one new PKR slot. Then Tengku Zafrul gets the other one.
I see.
Yeah. Then from UMNO's side, I think that maybe it might be a wider net. Many people have speculated various different people. But I think because of the prominence that UMNO is always given to the Ketua Wanita position, she would probably be the one to be elevated from deputy minister to full minister.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would probably be where it lands. But I think we might also have to wait a few more weeks until Nick Nazmi's resignation takes effect, because he's on longer leave than Rafizi, before these announcements are made.
What are the odds that you think that end of the day Nick Nazmi will rescind his resignation? And
I don't think he will rescind his resignation. I mean, out of principle, you make the resignation, you don't rescind it, but PMX could reappoint him. Then it's a very clear cut. Like, I resigned. I walked away voluntarily, but I was still asked to serve by the Prime Minister. Then I think if he accepts the reappointment, then it's okay. It's not about him backpedaling his pledge to step aside if he loses.
And what are the odds do you think that will happen?
Because there is a case of you have one new vice president that doesn't have a ministerial position, I would say probably quite small. I think PMX will appoint him. And this deals with another problem that PMX has in his cabinet. He doesn't have a Tamil cabinet minister, which is a very big contention, a very big issue for the Indians in this country.
That's true.
Yeah. So this could be the chance to make that right before the next general elections.
Okay.
So
now it sounds like very viable.
If you ask me, I think that is most likely the case. That makes the most sense. But we'll see what PMX finally decides.
No, I want to throw in a rumor that people are talking about, but rumor pure rumor right? Yeah, they say they could be bringing in KJ back into one of the seats.
No smoke without fire.
By putting him in as a Senate as well, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, what do you think are the odds of that then?
Close to zero. Any way you slice it, it doesn't do Anwar any favors. I think KJ, for better or for worse, has made it very clear that he aspires to be the Prime Minister. So unless KJ says that, I'm happy to join PKR today and support Anwar fully until Anwar decides to retire, there's no sense for you to bring in someone who is relatively popular and wants your job.
Yeah.
Because if he wants a minister's job, never mind, different story, because Anwar is way above that.
Yeah.
If he wants Nick Nazmi's job, then different lah.
Yeah.
Okay? But
I
think he's very clear. He wants
to be
a Prime
PM.
Minister. He wants to be a Prime Minister. So why bring him in?
Okay.
I think close to zero. But that doesn't mean the door is closed to KJ. I think the problem with KJ joining any of the existing political party is, if he's not going to be the head of the party, then why join? Because the way he's positioned himself, like, I want to go after it. He went after Zahid. He wants to be the head of UMNO. If he goes into PKR, he wants to be the head of PKR. And until the day that comes that KJ is willing to say, like, no, I don't want to be the head. I'm very happy to serve as the number 2 or number 3 or number 4 to the head. Then only can any head of any party, including PKR, feel comfortable to bring him in.
That's true.
But even if that happens and PMX is comfortable to bring him in, the 30 people under PMX, will they be comfortable for a new competitor to come in? It's a very tough road.
Yeah, someone is a guy who wins a lot of popular votes.
He wins the public popular vote.
Oh, he wins a popular vote.
But
this guy.
I think Rafizi has demonstrated that winning the public popular vote does not translate to party votes.
That's true. Yeah, leadership vote is a whole different story altogether.
Yes, it is.
Right. Now, while we're on this topic about cabinet and everything, I think one of the things that we should pay attention to is actually the Sabah election that's going to be
coming up very soon, any day now.
Yes. And time and time again, I see a lot of the headlines, which is very, very complicated.
It is.
I think Sabah state election is more complicated than a 3-4 way boy-girlfriend relationship.
It is.
Yeah.
That's a very good analogy.
So to give a little bit context to the public right now, right? Let's talk a little bit about this, right? The Sabah political scene is actually very interesting because there is this part that is very much driven by local sentiments, right? There's a lot of historical grievances. Sabah as a state and Sarawak as well has always felt they are the abandoned child of the Malaysia product, right? Okay. Yeah, as a nation, right? And Sarawak has been really fighting for their rights, but Sabah is still relatively Not there yet. I think mainly it's because they haven't get their political act together entirely. But if once they do, we never know where it's gonna head to next, right? However, what's interesting is that the current unity government front in Sabah state is actually made up of GRS, PH and UMNO. And GRS and UMNO had a very interesting past of betrayal where I think in 2023, Bong Mokhtar actually kind of led a coup who tried to overthrow them. And ever since then, they have this thing that, we'll never ever trust each other. But out of all the circumstances, bring them together into one party right now. Yeah. And so there's this whole question about who's going to take how many seats. And when Nur Izzah took over, coming in as a PKR deputy, she also said that we want X number of seats.
Yes.
And so now suddenly it adds on to a lot of complication, right?
There is.
What can you take us behind the scenes? Like what's actually happening right now?
All right. So basically, there are four big forces in Sabah. The first one is GRS, the incumbent chief minister, and its group of parties, and that's a big block. Okay, all four are big blocks. So you got GRS, local parties, a group of local parties. And then you got Warisan, single party, also a big force. So these two are purely Sabah. Then you've got the two national level ones. You've got Barisan Nasional, basically UMNO. MCA has been very quiet in Sabah lately, so basically UMNO, but BN Sabah. And then you've got Pakatan Harapan in Sabah, which is Amanah, DAP and PKR. So these four forces will have to decide, are they going to fight, four-corner fight all over Sabah, or are they going to partner up? Now, with the relationship that we have at the federal level between BN and PH, I would say that is my read of the situation is quite safe to say that BN and PH will cooperate, won't fight each other in Sabah, because the elections is this year. It's due anytime now, and it will be sometime more before we come to our general election. So the cooperation that we have at the national level will probably extend to Sabah. I think between Zahid and PMX, they will find a way to iron out the differences.
Yep.
All right. Then comes these two local big parties, Warisan and GRS. How will the combination be? It seems that everyone can work together with somebody on some level and cannot work together with somebody else on other levels. So who can combine with who to fight who? It seems to be very open and
That's
up
the
in
black
the air.
box, right?
Yes. So it's not like not like Sarawak. It's not like here in Semenanjung where it's very straightforward. Pakatan will always fight Perikatan. Every day, every year, every month, we'll just always contest against each other. Sabah, a bit more complicated, a bit more fluid. All right. But if GRS and PHBN can find a way to come to an agreement on the seats, then I think they can go together as one united front. Then it'll be basically a two-sided fight. You got Warisan on one side, and Warisan has given a lot of indication that he does not want to negotiate with anyone at this point of time. He doesn't want to share seats. He doesn't want to share power. Either win or lose on its own. If it contests and he wins a simple majority, then it jalan by itself and if it loses, it loses It's like you're going all in in your game of poker. Whereas GRS is, I think, also prepared to go on their own, but at the same time, let's see how we can go together. But if they go together, which means everyone has to scale down.
Yep.
Their
Take a step
ambition.
back, right?
Yeah, you have to, because if PH and BN and GRS are going to contest under one flag, under one team, then you cannot overlap with each other. So then you have to cut down the number of seats you contest. So I think the basic principle that we always have in Malaysian politics is incumbent continue So incumbent fight the seat, and then the other side seat, then we talk about it. So in this case, basically the Warisan seats, GRS, PH and BN will have to divide among themselves who will fight in the Warisan seats. Whereas all the seats that GRS, PH and BN are incumbents in, they will continue to contest. That's more likely the outcome. And if that coalition can be engineered, then it'll be a very straightforward contest in the Sabah election. But if not, probably looking at a three-corner fight between GRS, Warisan and PHBN. So it's something to watch, and I think this thing won't be settled until the very last minute. The negotiations will keep going.
Yeah. So here's where it's really interesting for me when I look at this whole situation right now. If you look at the ruling coalition wise, we know that GRS and UMNO can't see eye to eye. And PH has always been
Not
there.
all of UMNO. UMNO also is
okay,
is
not all
split.
of UMNO.
Bung Mokhtar's UMNO.
Bung Mokhtar's UMNO. Okay, fair. Yeah. But there's more.
There's still UMNO ministers in GRS's cabinet.
Okay, fair, right? Yeah. So with that in mind, PH has always been kind of like the mediator party, right?
Okay.
I mean, in a way, general, although it's a bit
Alright.
blanket, yeah. But PH also has its own requests, right?
Of
The
course.
day one, especially with
course.
PKR now being very upfront. Ruiza has mentioned, I want X amount of seats,
Yeah.
right? What do you think, like, it will really look like? Do you think all this will create more tension and make it even harder for Sabah to be politically stable? Because that's the issue about Sabah, right? In order for Sabah people to advance further, you need a strong political party to kind of develop the state to a certain extent. If not, then you're depending on federal, right? Unlike
Okay.
Sarawak's side, very straightforward. Now, okay, we are tight. We'll put it forward our request. But Sabah side is still also messy, everything all. How do you think this will affect the people of Sabah itself in the future if this never settles?
If you're looking to settle like one party wins big and wins all, then I think we would have to wait a very long time. I don't think anytime soon, quote unquote, things will settle. It's just the nature of politics. It's just the nature of society. We have very differing views and we all support different parties, but not to the extent where one person can win 60-70% of the vote and be a domineering party. So for better or for worse, in Sarawak is the complete opposite of the rest of the country, where they've got a dominating party, a party that really has a high percentage of the local support. Whereas in Sabah, there's a contestation of four giants. And no one is going to win 70% of the vote to get a strong government. But a strong government is not the all and be all of the situation, because just because you're strong doesn't mean you advance further. So many countries with dictators who are super strong also go down the toilet. So sometimes strong is worse for a state or for a country than having coalition governments. Having coalition puts a lot of check and balance on wrongdoing, puts a lot of check and balance on agreeing on what's the best way forward. Because if you're three parties in one government, then the three parties have to agree on this way forward. And if they don't agree on this way forward, you can't move that way forward. So it does have its benefit to be in a coalition. I mean, look at strong economies in the world like Germany is always a coalition government. So having a coalition is not weak, in my opinion, and having a strong party is not necessarily good also at the same time.
So there's pros and cons on both sides, right?
So maybe we don't be so fixated.
Right.
I feel like maybe we don't have to be very fixated on one party winning big and winning strong in order for Sabah to succeed.
Right.
I think it's a lot more complicated than that. But at the same time, it also comes down to the vision of the leaders and what they have for the people, and to draw up something, a master plan to move forward. So I don't envy some of the challenges that Sabah have. See, Sarawak, people always say Sabah and Sarawak should be the same, but it's not really the same. One of the things is Sarawak has an abundance of cheap energy. It has lots of hydro, but the terrain is conducive for building this hydro. Like Semenanjung, we have tapped out all the hydro potential, because you need your mountains to be a certain formation for you to be able to contain the water at a cost-effective manner. And Sabah doesn't have access to cheap energy. That's a challenge for Sabah. So how does Sabah move forward with all the challenges that it has? It's not easy for any of the leaders to chart that course, but I think that's maybe where these coming elections may set the tone for the coming term. To be fair, the last term, when we were going through the COVID phase, so a lot of distractions were there, and a lot of political instability was there, and maybe this election is a good reset for the people of Sabah to decide that. But it comes down to all the leaders now. The four big giants need to have vision for Sabah, and hopefully they contest on that, and that will be I think the ultimate benefit.
Right.
But in terms of who's going to fight with who, every time I talk to friends from Sabah, not just DAP but outside DAP also, it's still very much up in the air, and I think it will remain up in the air until the last minute.
Wow.
I think it's not easy to negotiate things like, I've been working on contesting 10 seats. and then now I need to scale back down to 3 seats. I need to let go a lot of the areas that I've been doing the groundwork for the last 3 years. Because if I go into a coalition with you, then I'm not going to contest against you. You're the
That's right.
incumbent. So I got to scale back. I got to tell all my members there that, hey, I know you work so hard, probably for free in the last 3 years, working the ground, building relationships with all the Ketua Kampung, with all the local NGOs, with all the residents, organizing program after program after program, and preparing the ground to contest. And then now we've got to walk away and let the political enemy, it's much more enemy at that lower level because you're fighting every day, for support.
And here's where that's why I really want to ask you, because you have been very involved in the whole state government thing. You're Adun,
Yes.
a big part of your life in your political career right now,
it's
right?
a huge part of my life.
Yeah, huge part of your life, right? And I understand that when it comes to Adun and the federal level, these two are totally different creature as well, right? To a certain extent, the things that you're involved in. And so in your perspective, when you look at how Sabah is, right? And like I was mentioning, because you have the experience of seeing how Bukit Gasing developed, how PJ changed, everything. And I understand a big part of it was also due to the local Adun's help and a lot of state government planning and everything. And therefore, there is some sort of a stability needed to actually advance things further.
Stability is definitely important.
And so for you, in your perspective, when you look at Sabah's case, right? Because it's so complicated, it's not like here, right? And it's just whole different complexity. What are your thoughts for them to move forward?
I think while stability is important, stability is not impossible to achieve or not elusive just because you have coalition. So I think if we've got to accept, I think that Sabah, just like at the federal level, you will not have an outright winner. You will not have somebody who would be in the supermajority anymore. So there has to be coalition, but coalition can be very stable. Okay, you contest the election, you win, you divide the cabinet positions according to the coalition agreement, and then you stick with that for the 5 years. Then it's stable.
Right.
It's a combination, but it's stable. And there is coalition at Selangor. DAP and PKR have to find a way to work together. It doesn't magically happen. There's a lot of conversation, dialogue, give and take for it to happen. And then you have Amanah, you have UMNO as part of the government, and there is coalition at Selangor level as well. And you have to build that coalition, and that stability can come. But as to then the vision, so vision is important, but let's look at the flip side of it also. Sometimes your natural advantages are also very important. So if you look at the case of the Klang Valley, it's the largest city in the country. And if you look all over Asia, the pattern is largest cities always grow economically. You know what? To some extent, I dare say, if all the governments in Asia just close shop for 1 year, take a holiday, we just don't need government. We just let the cities do whatever they do for 1 year. All these capital cities will continue to do well. Bangkok, KL, Tokyo, because that's where the economic center is, where people are all congregating, and that's where the economy just grows and grows. And businesses lead. Businesses do whatever they do, and money in economy is generated, and people have money, and people can spend money, and the economy just continues to grow. Whereas when you have a challenging situation, like Sabah has a lot of disadvantages, and then you need a lot of intervention, and a lot of the intervention also needs to come from federal as well as from state. So it's not easy, and maybe one of the experiences that I've had when I was involved at the MACC level is that implementing projects in Sabah sometimes can be very difficult because every department has a very strong voice, and so now you want to lay a power line from A to B. You need to cross some roads. You need to deal with JKR. You need to cross some rivers. You need to deal with the drainage. You need to cross irrigation department. You need to cross some forests. You need to deal with the forestry department. They got concerns, what are you going to do to mitigate the wildlife impact? You got a lot of, let's go with well-meaning, all right? But maybe could be far more efficient. And so there are a lot of challenges in rolling out. You can't just wish for things to happen. So the detailed planning is important, and the detailed planning is the plan and the subsequent detailed planning and the subsequent follow through, a strong hand to follow through to ensure the implementation goes ahead is very important to move forward. But it is actually it's an opportunity. Sometimes when you have challenges, it's an opportunity for the next government to showcase what they can do.
Yeah.
So, you know,
So that's why.
let's take it positive. Like, you know, showcase. But, you know, how are you going to fix energy in Sabah? What is Sabah going to take on as their new energy source to move forward?
Yeah.
Are they going to be dependent on gas as they have been in the past? Are they going to branch out to cheaper energy like coal? Because Sabah has been very vocal against coal, which is what we have very much in Peninsular Malaysia.
That's right.
Coal is cheap. Coal is very dirty, but coal is cheap. And that can boom the economy. Sarawak is lucky. The terrain has blessed them with a lot of hydro. And that hydro is cheap and clean.
That's right. That's right.
But not everyone wins this kind of lottery, geographical
Well,
lottery.
as a geographical lottery, can't really have much things that we can change.
Energy is important so that your industry can grow from there, and then your economy can grow.
I think that's why for me, to a certain extent, when I look at Sabah's situation very often is they have a lot of challenges because being a more underdeveloped state in that sense, they have a lot of terrain challenges as well. Yeah, I mean, it's not like KL, I want to lay a line, I pass a few houses,
It's
one
a
ministry.
huge state.
Huge state, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's a huge state.
so you have just to get something done, maybe for Malaysia, for this part of the world, we only need like let's say assuming 6 months to get everything ready and then project can get going within 1 year, right? I suppose there you will need about 2 years simply
Possibly.
because of that. And then also the political willpower and everything also. To a certain extent, sometimes I feel like Sabah, compared to Klang Valley or anything else, you need even more, to a certain extent, consolidated power.
Consolidated power or
to have that willpower to pushing through. Because even as a Selangor citizen as well, I have seen how Selangor developed as we became more politically stable. Right? Like because now you don't have to figure like, okay, I'm just gonna do things for these next 5 years and I'm only gonna work for 3 years. The next 2 years I'm gonna campaign, right? Yeah, and you guys can consolidate it and say that okay, I'm very certain I have a 10 years window, and suddenly the development became so different, right? And I feel that Sabah kind of needs that, yeah, but again, it's beyond my pay grade to solve. But
So as an outsider, and Sabahans, please don't be angry. Maybe one of the starting blocks to the solution is federal assistance for the power supply. Because if power supply is stable and power supply is affordable, then industry can grow.
Well, that's a good idea.
So in all fairness, when you look at the whole Semenanjung, is power generation and the supply more expensive in Perlis or Johor or KL? Actually, you don't know. Because TNB lumps up the whole Semenanjung and averages out, and your tariff is the same. Whether you are in KL or Kelantan, Kelantan or Perlis or Perak, the rural parts of Semenanjung, you have to drag the power line so far to reach one house. Whereas here in one condo, you just need to drag few meters of wire from your main switch box to each house.
Betul.
But everyone pays the same tariff. So the cost of supply and the what the customer have to pay is very different. So, if we localize the supply here, Tioman will be very expensive. Fraser's Hill will be very expensive. Cameron Highlands will be very expensive. So difficult to pull the power supply there. Now, Sabah is facing a lot of challenge because Sabah is isolated. They have their own power company. But if there is federal assistance to equalize it to Semenanjung, set the same standards like, okay, what will it take to upgrade Sabah's power so that it's of the same reliability as Semenanjung? And maybe the Sabahans don't have to pay more than Semenanjung for it, and the balance is topped up by the federal government. I think that would be a good kickstart for Sabah.
Yeah, I think there's a good manifesto to put in, right?
It's a manifesto that federal government needs to say.
Yeah, the federal government needs to say, right?
Your Sabah politician, you say also you can't deliver on that, right? It's federal.
Yeah. Federal actually should put that in their manifesto and say, hey, we win, this is what we're going to deliver to you, because it's going to be a long-term planning, good for Sabahan over the long term.
Yeah.
Solve a big issue.
Yeah, and then people are enterprising. People will move forward with their businesses, industries, and whatnot. But you need infrastructure.
Yeah, that's true.
You need infrastructure.
Hey, that's a good one. Okay, thank you very much. Right now we are coming to the end of our second segment, and later when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about SST and also some reformation agendas.
All right, see you after the break.
Hi, welcome back to the final segment of Are We OK Season 2 with Rajiv.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Rajiv. So thank you very much for sharing with us about state elections parts and the earlier part. And right now, I just want to touch on this thing here very quickly, right? Recently, I noticed our Prime Minister has been more actively trying to tell people that the reform agenda is still alive, right? In fact, he spoke up on it. He said, hey, the reform is still there. You all don't just always say that no more reform, right? I think this especially became a hit because Rafizi kind of represented that reform voice, and the fact that Rafizi is no more there and he accepted the resignation, he had to kind of like balance it out. And the next thing that he mentioned that became a topic, I believe he mentioned a lot of things, but media picked up the part was many of the different arrests that were carried out by MACC. So I guess that currently the brand of MACC that people see out there that people have a question about is if MACC is really for justice, or is it for justice with a political bias, right? And here's the philosophical argument behind as well, right? If it is for justice, does it matter whether is it for political bias, right? And definitely the most obvious thing as well that a lot of people talk about but don't talk very openly is the MACC chief, right? Which in previously a lot, even under opposition, they criticize him so much.
Yeah.
And until now, he's still there. And in fact, suddenly now he is a very important component of the whole party, right? Now,
No, he's not part of the party.
no, not part of the party, right? Sorry. I mean, the whole
Agenda,
the whole agenda, right?
Yes.
Sorry. Not a good use of words, right? But my point is that when I look at it at a citizen point of view, I'm actually semi-happy, semi-not happy. Let me share what's the unhappy part. The unhappy part for me is optics. Why? Because earlier you all said that he's not clean, and now you all continue him for so long, right?
Yeah.
Second part that I'm happy is the fact that yes, there's been a lot of activity going on in MACC. Really, they have been really taking down a lot of cases. Now, are they political bias or not? I do not have the privy, but as far as I'm concerned, they have been really, really cracking down on a lot of cases. And you can see even at a ground level, police level, they are definitely way more careful in the way they do things, right? So, yeah, what's your thought about this, and what's the complication behind? Because you are part of that opposition that turned federal.
Correct.
And so what's your perspective on it?
I think to start off, I too hope for more visible reform, for more reform. And I too wish that it moves at a faster pace than what it is moving today. But I also do appreciate the constraints that are there. First of all, you do not have a free hand. You don't come into government and then you say, okay, I'm going to change all the civil servants. You see, like in Trump campaign, I want to fire the Fed chief. The minute I get into office, I want to fire this person. I want to fire that person. I want to replace that head of that. I'm going to replace. It doesn't work like that in Malaysia. Your civil service is there permanently. Governments come and go, but your civil service is there. You have to work within that constraint. I would say the word constraint, but for better or for worse, that's the British system that we've inherited. And there is a lot of complication or a lot of nuances that you need to balance within any organization. All right. But notwithstanding that, I'm glad you gave credit to MACC. I think you were given more credit than I would have given to MACC. I would love to see an even stronger fight out there. But it's great. It's great that they go after any fish, big, small, medium fish. You must go after. If you want to ever eradicate corruption, you just need to start catching and putting people away. And so it's important that they go after. And sometimes the performance of civil servants under one prime minister may not equal to what they really want to perform. They may be held back by the previous prime minister.
Right.
And there's also that system, if the prime minister blocks you or the deputy prime minister blocks you, it's not easy. From outside, we just say, no man lah, just bulldoze only, do your job. It's easy for you to say from the outside, but it may not be that easy when you are in that seat, being pressured. And I hope that Anwar has removed the shackles that may have been there on various parts of MACC for them to move forward.
Right.
And if let's say even if 70% of the shackles are removed and 30% are not, it's still something better than nothing.
Improvement.
It's still something better than nothing. And it's also, unfortunately, you are in a coalition situation. And that if you move your reform too fast, when your partners are not willing and ready to come with you, you destabilize the government. And after going through the last 5 years, since 2020, since the Sheraton move until today, I think first and foremost, everybody wants stability. The industries, the economy, the businesses, the rakyat in general, I think first and foremost, stability. Then the reform. So don't make the status quo worse. But whatever improvement that you can make, then that's a win. But don't make the status quo worse. At least we shouldn't ever move backwards in any measurement of any of the reform agenda. Even if you can't move forward, don't move backwards.
Right.
But if I may offer a suggestion, there should be teams set up at the second level of each party. So your top level of each party are sitting in cabinet. And they got a heavy agenda that they need to go through every Wednesday at the cabinet meeting. And I'm sure they discuss the best that they can in that MACC session, because there's so many things that need to be decided on. We always focus on the few things that matter to us, but overall there's, what matters to me is different what matters to you. What matters to rural folk in Perak, what matters differently to someone in Sabah, what matters to businessmen, what matters to students. And there are many cabinet papers in every cabinet meeting, and I'm sure they got enough things on their plate to discuss. I would suggest a second tier at, each party sends 5 representatives to have continuous dialogue on what the reform agenda is and should be.
Right.
And to win over, to understand what the constraints are from the various other component parties. All 19 parties send representatives, start to understand why you're apprehensive towards this. Let's hear your counterpoint of view. Let's understand it. Let's listen. And when we listen, then when you listen to them, they're more likely to listen to you. So let's have the dialogue going. Hammering through reform is very difficult to succeed.
Right.
Unless you win with a huge majority in a parliamentary system, you can't really hammer reform.
Right.
It's different from a presidential system. You win as a president, you got all your executive orders, you jalan. But this is a British parliamentary system where the cabinet is formed as like a consensus of the parties that are in the ruling government. No one wins outright. Last time, UMNO got super majority. So whatever UMNO wants to do, everybody fall in line or get out.
Right.
It doesn't matter. If all the component parties of BN get out and UMNO is the only one left in government, also they got super majority. But that's not the case anymore. So right now, you need to have more communication. And so that would be my suggestion to improve the reform situation. Every party have a team of thinkers that are able to articulate constraints.
Yeah.
Why we cannot support local government election. Pakatan very clear. We want local government election for DBKL. And why does BN feel that they cannot support local government election? We should dialogue.
Yeah. So here's where I think it's really interesting, right? Why is there no dialogue to even start with?
There is dialogue. To say there's no dialogue also, I
there's
would
no
say
formal dialogue from what I've seen. It's more
there's
informal.
no publicized dialogue.
Like you're a friend.
Yeah.
I noticed that time to time you will talk to each other and stuff like that, and overheated. Like you had a conversation with Ang Mao, right?
Yeah.
And my question is that why shouldn't this be formalized, just like a parliamentary session where people from different parties come together, the thinkers, the strategists behind, to sit together and say, look, let's advance. Yes, we also want more power, but let's advance in such a way that while we are fighting for our positions, we should also benefit the people, right?
So there is a formal setup. You've got your Majlis President, you've got your secretariat of all the parties at the Pakatan level, at the unity government level. So they to say that there's no setup also not quite true. There is setups, but at the very top, the reason why I suggest a second tier is because at the very top level, there's only so much you can do. There's so much that needs to be discussed, and they are all very they
will be a bit away from some of the actual happenings, right?
So if every party puts 5 non-ministers, non-executive, into a special committee, so a second tier committee to dialogue, that's where I feel that could be an additional bonus to help the process along. So some changes can be accepted after dialogue, and some changes take a longer dialogue. So you know that some of your component parties are very against some things, and you know what, in a coalition, in any kind of coalition government, it is important that you just move forward, because you have at any one time 100 decisions to make. Don't, because of 3 issues, you collapse the whole government and put the country into instability. You cannot always walk out when you don't agree on 1 issue or 2 issues or 3 issues. There's so much more at stake. So to have a thing like, oh, whenever we disagree, we walk out. Whenever we disagree, we walk out. We don't like this issue, we walk out. Then every government will fail every 3 months. So no,
It's not going to work, man.
Not going to work. And if that is the standard that we expect as an opposition, I will goreng the 1 issue that you cannot agree and force you to break up.
Correct.
And it is not sustainable. It is not stable. It's not sustainable for the country to have that kind of level. So it's not to say we should be unprincipled. We are principled. We maintain the positions that we have. So things that I stand for. For example, I strongly believe in local government election, and I don't foresee myself ever changing my mind on it. Like, I believe that there should be elections at the local level and should be representation. People should be able to choose their local government.
Yeah.
But I also realize that the majority of parliament doesn't agree with that. Pakatan is only 82 seats out of 222 seats in parliament. Not enough. The rest of the parties outside Pakatan do not subscribe to this belief. The only way to get there is to continuously dialogue. And that dialogue sometimes takes time. And so that's why I suggest that there needs to be more. So at the same time, if you want to look for failures in any coalition government, sure can find a whole list of failures. Because any coalition in the world sure have to let go something. If you had nothing to let go, then why are you 2 separate parties? Why not you all together in one happy family? As it is, within one party, you have different of opinions. For sure, in a coalition, you have different of opinions. So focus on what you have in common and make sure that one move forward. Because if you move forward 10 agendas, even though you didn't successfully move forward 20 other things that your supporter wants, but you move forward 10 agendas, you still move the country forward. And I think where we are today, we will not have an outright majority anytime soon.
Yes.
You got 3 big nationally, like you got BN, you got Perikatan, and you got PH. And these 3, neither will win outright majority anytime soon. So you have to learn to work in a coalition.
I think the idea of having a second tier dialogue to happen, I think that's actually probably a great idea, right?
Yeah.
Because the truth is that if you are under the executive branch and you're at so high level, there are a lot of things also you're a little bit out of touch with, right? Because the organization is so big, right?
Yeah.
You actually do need people coming from all layers of it to actually represent, to actually speak up on what are the true concerns. Then sometimes we think certain issue is due to this reason, that's why another party is rejecting. But there could be a deeper layer of reasoning.
There could be.
That just by tackling with that deeper layer, this, what we thought was an objection will not be an objection.
Yeah.
And suddenly it may work out to a win-win solution,
could,
right?
yes.
But I don't think that at this point there is a really very well-planned, intentional dialogue that's
So
happening.
that's why I suggest that there should be. Yeah. So hopefully we would see more of that. But also beyond the political parties, what about civil society? Like, there's one particular NGO, let's not name names, but those who are really following may know, that always releases a regular report on racism in this country. And then they will, after they release their annual report on the state of racism in this country, they will do a forum. And they always do the forum in PJ. And I said, I welcome you. You always come to my kawasan to do your forum. A lot of NGOs are in my kawasan. Their offices are in my kawasan. And then you get an audience of very liberal thinking who don't want to see any form of racism. And in this forum, everyone will speak in English because that's the national language of this country. Sorry, being sarcastic here. I challenge them. Why don't you go to do this forum next year in Taman Medan?
Actually, they should do that.
Just 3 kilometers away, go to Taman Medan and talk about racism there.
Yes.
They are not. Because you always want to preach to your choir. Same thing with all the NGOs pushing for local government election. What they will do is they will come and bang PKR and DAP. Why you never deliver? Why you never deliver? Why you never deliver? How many of you go and sit down with PAS and Bersatu and say, hey bro, why you don't agree to local government election? Can share with me. I want to understand what you feel.
True.
So dialogue should happen at the 19 parties of the unity government, but dialogue should also happen in civil society, and these dialogues that happen among all our hundreds of NGOs also play an important part in moving the reform agenda.
Actually, that's a very good idea. I think should hold like events where, sometimes I think about it like the Greeks, right? Last time they would have a temple dialogue. Everyone would go into I can't remember what's the name, but usually it's the temple or something like that.
Yeah.
People go there and they'll raise a question, right? Like, are we doing this one? What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah.
And people would just participate. People would just share. People share their thoughts. How is it happening? Why is it like that? And after some time, it evolves to become a movement, an idea, and it just catches on fire, right?
Yeah,
I think today we kind of lack that discourse in physical life, real life. We have more of it in form of Instagrams, TikToks, Reddit groups. People talk about it, forums.
It's always in our own bubble.
Yes, in your own bubble.
Everyone talks in our own bubble.
Yeah, and it's very easy to send in a side troop to do something about it. And suddenly now the real conversation is not really happening. It's actually side troop populating the whole thing.
yes.
So I feel there should be some sort of activity like that goes around Malaysia, right? Like maybe going into kampong, right? And ask them, what do you truly think about the state of racism?
Yeah.
Why do you feel being shortchanged,
Yeah.
right? Stuff like that, right? And I think that would be a good thing to have. That would be really, really a good thing.
I'm glad
to
you
have.
support this.
Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, maybe you should figure out something with that.
I hope we can make it happen.
Since we have a media channel, right?
Yeah.
No, I think just to close it off for the last topic, I thought let's talk a little bit about SST. And
all right.
I think that this is something that will be quite good for you to give a comment on, right? Because you are very close to the people.
Yeah.
I mean, quite a few times I go and makan chicken rice. I actually see you there talking to people, and during campaign time as well, you're even more there. Yeah, you're someone that I know of so far in Bukit Gasing area. You have been really actively involved in people's lives, and I know that people actually do come up to you and tell you, "Hey, drain block, stuff like that."
Yes, they
you're
do.
one of those aduns, right? Not the.
I think everyone gets it. It's just whether you want to do something about it or not.
No, there are some aduns that I know of that I don't see them at all.
Never see it. Okay.
I shall not name names, but
Okay.
yeah. But having said that,
someone gave me, one of my seniors in DAP gave me this tip when I first contested, that every day eat in a different shop. Never go back to the same restaurant too regularly. And I'm I'm an introvert, if for those who don't realize. If you ask me, I would go back to the same 5 shops. I would go back to my comfort zone. But by forcing myself to every day eat in a different shop, I force myself to be seen by different parts of Bukit Gasing. So then more people can see that, hey, they saw me there today, or they saw me there. People are in their circles, and as long as you force yourself to go to every circle, they will eventually bump into you.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I know the next thing I'm gonna ask DAP Aduns already next time. Where is good food? Because you probably tried every single restaurant.
I've tried a lot. Maybe not all, because PJ has a lot, but
Hey.
I keep moving around.
So you guys are actually probably the best food reviewer. Just that you cannot openly talk about it.
But don't take sides lah. All the restaurants are so our constituent. If I take side with A, then B will feel a bit sad.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a secret list. Where's the best chapati around, or best
okay.
thosai, or best chicken rice?
But
I'm gonna
I'll
ask
say
you
I
that.
come to PJ. A lot of good food.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Now
coming back to this
Coming back
thing.
to the topic, right? Because this time around we are talking about expansion of service, right?
Yeah.
There's a leasing and rental service for annual turnover of more than 500,000. You actually get SST also, construction service, even fee-based financial planning services, private healthcare, which is an area of concern for you, right? Yeah, private education service, even beauty services,
Yep.
right? Now, we also had a conversation this morning over breakfast talking about the gas and everything, or cooking and stuff like that. But to sum it all together, right, what are some of the things that you're hearing from the ground when it comes to SST right now? People come to you. Other people came up and say, "Hey, Adun, susah lah now. My rental, very difficult." These kind of things.
Okay, residents asking for financial assistance or complaining about cost of living is definitely there. And I think no matter what we always have to face that and be sensitive to that. You always will have segments of societies who are living under tremendous cost of living pressures. I also, I also feel that one of the big contributing factors is that there's too much disruption now. The rate of disruption in businesses is very rapid. The rate of automation in businesses are very rapid, and jobs are always at risk. And any cushy job that you have today may disappear tomorrow. And so don't look down on people who lost their job and can't get back on their feet. That may happen to us in the coming years. So we should always be sensitive and mindful to those who are going through that hardship. And there's a lot of adjustment that's happening out there. There's a lot of transition that's happening in the economy. So cost of living pressures are there. But maybe I always am concerned of the other side of the coin. You look at our national finances. So if you were to check out today, you can Google all this and you got ChatGPT to go and get all this kind of data. Tax revenue is often measured against GDP as a ratio of GDP. So how much of our GDP do we collect as revenue to do all the agenda of the government? So government has lots of agenda, providing infrastructure, providing security, hiring all the police, your army, providing healthcare, education. Government has an endless list of agendas. It also has always a lot of people lobbying for improvement to the agenda, adding to the agenda. We need to expand this. We need to expand care for wildlife. We need to expand university education. We need to give better healthcare treatments and so on. We need to build new hospital like PJ. We are asking for a new hospital in PJ because PJ doesn't have a GH. But all of this costs money. So how much money do we collect? And in Malaysia, our tax to GDP ratio is among the lowest you can find in the world. It's around 12.6% today, which is very, very low. Look at our neighbors. So if you look at Thailand, it's around 18%. Vietnam is about 18%. Asia Pacific is about 19%. If you look at the developed countries, the OECD countries, European countries, Japan, Korea, then the average goes up to about 34%. So that slight change, like from 12.5% up to 15%, can make a huge difference in the revenue that we collect to be able to get the agenda done. We always say that we need better hospitals, we need better schools. But where does the money come from? So how do we collect tax? So if we have a conversation of like how much should we raise and how do we raise that, then it would be a very different conversation than receiving the list of new taxes like SST expansion covering these few new areas. Of course, it's painful. Of course, people who are affected by it will feel upset. Definitely, it's only human to do so. I'm sure every new tax that you have to pay, you will definitely feel some form of pinch and you will definitely feel the micro level of it and why do we need to do this? But at the big picture, if the government doesn't raise its revenue, its agenda is going to be stalled. Its agenda cannot be done. And ironically, we always think that government revenue always continues to grow higher and higher, right, over the years. But 20 years ago, our tax revenue as a percentage of GDP was higher at 15.5%, dropped to 12.5% today. Slowly by slowly, every time budget, you hear of this exemption, that incentive, this exemption. And as the economy is growing, as cost of operations are going, as salaries are going up, your operation, if you are the CFO of the government of Malaysia, you are being squeezed. And to me, that's not a very pleasant topic to talk about. So it's no surprise that you don't hear I think I may be a very unusual politician to go around to say things like this on a screen. But you won't find many politicians going around talking about this because this may not be a pleasant conversation. But I think it's a very important conversation that we need to have. Yeah. If we don't jump to OECD level, don't jump from 12% to 34%. That's too much of a shock to our system. But if we don't go from 12.5% to 15.5%, we cannot realize significant improvements to our life. So must money be spent well? Yes. And I think, looking at like what Najib and Rosma did with public finances and all the haul of Birkin bags that you saw after 2018 when the police did the raids, that is things that should never, ever, ever happen again in our country.
Yep.
And that's why we need strong institutions to make sure that those who are in power are held to account. But at the same time, we also cannot go to the other extreme to say that, don't collect any more taxes. Don't raise taxes. Don't burden the people, because it is too myopic to say it's purely burdening the people. It does burden on one hand, but it returns back to the people, because it's a burden to people when your roads cannot be maintained properly. It's a burden to people when hospitals don't function. It's a burden to people when the education system fails.
Yep.
So yes, in a way it's a burden to people, but in a way it's also providing the necessary infrastructure, the necessary not just hard infrastructure, but soft infrastructure in this country, so that this country lives harmoniously. This country lives well. Happiness index is good. And that's something that costs money. And so how do you skin the cat? I mean, when all these SST announcements are made, then you hear all the technocrats may start coming up with go with GST.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So if we go with GST, that means all of these segments, all these sectors that are being announced for the SST will kena also.
Yeah.
But then not only that will kena, everything else will kena also. And that's where the KSU of the Ministry of Finance came out to say that, this is a bit more surgical. And that's why PMX has come out to say that, this one, by doing SST, you are choosing to include some goods in it and not all goods into it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more surgical. It's a lot lower revenue than by doing a GST one shot. And this is the balances that you got to strike in society. You want to raise revenue, but you want to do it gradually.
Yeah.
You don't want to shock the system. The system was shocked when the GST was done many years ago. And maybe if the GST was done differently last time, the system won't be as shocked. But whether it's GST or whether it's SST, the big picture is revenue is important. And why don't we always pay attention to this? Is revenue to GDP today at 12.6%? Can we raise it to 12.8%? Can we go to 13%? Because how is it that other countries around the world can raise 18, 19, 20% and the people can accept it? And so if we are blessed like Brunei and Saudi Arabia, you got abundance of oil, then you don't need to raise income tax. But even Saudi Arabia now has 15% GST. So if you don't have that blessing of these natural resources like a handful of countries in the world has, then it has to come from some form of taxation. Income tax is not really the best way also to raise taxes. You balance, you have some income tax, you have some consumption tax. So SST, GST, all these are some form of consumption tax. And finding that right balance is the way to minimize the pain while maximizing the revenue. But if we don't raise revenue, we cannot deliver service. So everyone says, the healthcare budget should be 5% of GDP. How can healthcare budget be 5% of GDP when tax collection is only 12.6% of GDP? So that's why the healthcare spending is around 2-point-something% of GDP. You're constrained there. Whereas if you raise the revenue collection, then you give more room for this. And that is not something that, that's something that comes back to help people. So if you raise revenue so that all ministers get a private plane each, then no deal lah. I also will object to it. But in order for your essential services, they cost a lot. Education and healthcare are the two biggest expenses in our budget. And I think all Malaysians can agree that these two things need massive improvement. It needs an injection of cash. Why are there school buildings that are still not in fully good condition, that still have leaking roofs, that are not have to give special budget to fix up all the toilets? Why can there be situation today in Malaysia that school toilets don't function properly? It's so sad. But every education department at the district level gets this much of money, and then they need to choose, okay, I will repair this year and I'll repair that there and I'll repair this year and I have to KIB the rest.
Right.
Because I don't have enough money.
Right.
Yeah. So cutting down teachers, not really an option as well. Cutting down nurses and doctors, also not an option. Everyone will say there's a shortage of nurses. No one says there's oversupply of nurses and doctors in our hospital. So sometimes we nitpick on some small expenses that have gone crazy. And I will join the Rakyat in that lah. So that's why we need better institutions to curb corruption and to curb bad spending. So Auditor General's report every time highlights, expensive screwdriver and whatnot, right? maybe the Auditor General's department can be doubled up in size so there can be more scrutiny and more watchful eyes, and so that all this wasteful spending do not happen. But in the big picture, your Ministry of Education and your Ministry of Health, they are both, I think everyone won't deny this, that they are both really in need of more funds. And the only way forward is you got to raise revenue.
I agree the part of raising revenue for sure. And actually, my personal thought about this whole thing right now is there's this question about why not just do GST, right? But I think GST, like you say, is more blanket. And number two,
so all of these things that you feel that the tax shouldn't be there will be there.
Will be there, and it's going to be even more expanded.
But it's going to be more things.
Yeah. And another thing also is that why corporates prefer it, because you can claim back your GST.
Yeah.
And end of the day, the person who really bears the burden will actually be consumer to a big extent. It's going to be not said, but unspoken, right? Yeah. So, but SST on the other hand, it's a little bit more different, right? Yes, in the end, it's still going to be consumer bearing it. For any normal business, they will trickle it down. But I think you're right when it comes to it being much more surgical, because if you actually look at this whole list here, the whole expanded SST we are talking about here are not targeted towards B40. And from what I see is that it also don't really affect most of the B40. Now, leasing and rental services, if your annual turnover is more than 500,000, if you're talking about, they may increase your rental. So smaller business may receive a rental increase. Now, however, if you can rent a commercial building, then chances are you're running a business, which means that...
And I think your landlord is going to charge you the most amount of rent that he can charge to you anyway.
Correct. That's right.
So even without SST, if he got chance to raise your rent, he will raise your rent.
That's right. So then number two is actually construction service. This one also is for non-residential above 1.5 million, right? So again, it's targeted towards business. And these are one-off costs. So it doesn't really like, say if I renovate my things here in this building, then I'm going to charge you more for my... I can spread it out because of capex, right? Now, and the next thing, fee-based financial planning services, 8% rate for that, which also targets towards the richer people.
This
because
is like the T5, not even the T20.
In Malaysia, unfortunately, we do not have the habit of having
fee-based.
And common financial planners, because apparently there's only 1,400 financial planners.
And most people, the financial planning that they get is from the insurance agent.
That's right.
Yeah. And they don't charge you fee-based.
That's right. So maybe this should be something that we change in I'm trying to work on this actually.
So your other channel can focus on that.
There's a startup that I'm trying to build.
All right.
That's going to be focusing on M40 and B40's financial planning.
Okay.
Yeah, but not really a financial planning service. Let's see where that goes.
All right.
Right. Private healthcare. I think this one is but I think this one will trickle down to another whole sort of issue.
But as I think we are going through that whole issue anyway with
that's right.
Private hospital bills escalating like crazy.
That's right. I think the more sensitive one is actually this private education service. But I thought that they did very good by putting a 60,000. Anything above 60,000 per student.
So it's going for the higher end private schools, not the entry level private schools.
That's right. You're talking about higher end private schools, right? And so you're targeted towards people who are not price sensitive as well. However, this comes down to the next part of private school here. Do they mean by also higher education? And it says non-Malaysian higher education service. So here's where I'm not really clear, right? Do they mean by, let's say it's a higher ed in Malaysia, college, and 60K per student? Because if you're talking about degree, confirm more than that. Right?
Not necessarily. I mean, you study in Utah, it's less than 60,000 a year. So not necessarily. But this is where I think for the clarifications, I'm sure the government will continuously come up with clarifications, especially when implementation kicks in. But I think the bottom line is always like not to forget the big picture, because we can always nitpick on the small picture, but also not to forget the big picture of why we need this. And everything that you mentioned there all will kena. So if the proponents of GST get their way.
No difference actually.
So when you argue for GST to not have these taxes imposed, not very holistic argument, because it will still come into place. So maybe one day, I mean, a lot of the leaders of Pakatan have also said it's about the right time.
Yes.
When the economy and when people's incomes have reached a level when it can be done. So even Pakatan, who has probably been the most vocal against GST, has not outright rejected it wholesale. It's just about the right time for it.
Yeah.
And so So maybe this SST expansion is a starting step. It's not a perfect step. I think no matter what the bucket of items that MOF picked, they will always not be a perfect list.
Agree.
But it's something to start with. And
Yeah.
it's something that, as you have pointed out, it tries to minimize the hurt to the lower income. So more progressive.
More surgical, like
more
you say.
surgical, more progressive taxation style where the rich pay more. For the good of the country, the government still hasn't gone in to be a bit more strict on income tax. I mean, if you're in a lot of other countries, if you earn 1,500 ringgit, if you earn less than 2,000 a month, you will kena tax. In a lot of other countries, in America, you will kena tax. In UK, you will kena tax. But in Malaysia, if you're earning less than 3,000, you escape your income tax.
Yeah.
And that's something that we should also remember, that that if you reduce in one side, then you have to compensate on another side.
Something has to come
Yeah,
lah,
something
right?
has to come lah. Unless you want to go down the road of saying, okay lah, you know what, no more public healthcare lah. Everyone just go buy insurance and team yourself in the private hospital.
That's another issue altogether.
Another issue altogether. No need government school lah. Everyone just go private school lah. You know, you got no money to go school, then too bad lah. It shouldn't be the way. That shouldn't be the way lah. So that's the challenge. So, in fact, when it comes down to the surgical level, a lot of feedback comes in from the industry, and I think that's good, because these specific feedbacks are not general political statements, but sometimes changes are made when these feedbacks are given. So, I would encourage, don't give up hope. In fact, you should engage a member of parliament. Wherever you are in this country, you're listening to this, and you think that, a particular form of one or two or three of the items in the SST can be better defined. Engage a member of parliament. And you're a member of parliament when they bring it up in a very technical manner on these three items and how it can be improved, how we can improve the definition so that it hits the right target. Oftentimes this advice can be accepted and,
Right.
and be implemented. So the feedback cycle is always political and technical. While the political one, you have to deal with it lah, and then you have to answer back lah. But the technical one, I think the door is very, very open for discussion and for improvement.
All right.
And even then, at the local level, you talk about your local council, your state government also, a lot of regulation are fine-tuned with feedback. So don't hold back feedback. Feedback, give it to the government departments, like in this case, MOF, can also give it to your member of parliament.
All right. Okay, so that's all about it for this episode. Yeah,
All right.
Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you guys enjoy. Rajiv, thank you very much for
Thank
being
you-
here as well.
Thank you for having me, and
Yeah.
look forward to more shows.
All right, fantastic. So if you like this video, do hit the like and subscribe and share with your friends. And if you like it, we'll probably continue with this whole thing.
Okay.
Thank you very much. See you
All
guys
right.
next time.